This is the Behind the Line podcast, coming to you from the wacky left coast capital of Seattle. News from the Pacific Northwest, the left coast, the U.S., and the world that matters. The stories the MSM won't talk about. Deciphering the truth through all the lies. For more, visit BehindTheLinePodcast.com.
Let me read something to you and tell me if any of this sounds familiar to you. The basis of successful guerrilla combat is offensive action combined with surprise. During periods of low visibility, the guerrilla attacks, tries to gain a momentary advantage of firepower, executes his mission to capture or destroy personnel and equipment, and leaves the scene of action as rapidly as possible. Normally, the guerrilla does not consistently operate in one area, but varies his operations so that no pattern is evident. If possible, he strikes 2 or 3 targets simultaneously to divide the enemy pursuit and reinforcement effort. These attacks are normally conducted during periods of low visibility and are directed against isolated outposts, weakly defended locations, or the moving enemy. Guerrilla operations wear down and inflict casualties upon the enemy, cause damage to supplies and facilities, and hinder and delay enemy operations. The success of guerrilla operations, even the fact that the guerrillas continue to exist, lowers enemy morale and prestige, disrupts the economy, politics, and industry of the enemy or enemy-occupied areas, and maintains the morale and will to resist of the native population. Because guerrilla operations are primarily directed against lines of communication, industrial facilities, and key installations, they impede or interdict the movement of men and material and seriously affect the enemy's capability to supply, control, and communicate with his combat forces. In addition, the enemy is compelled to divert manpower and equipment to combat guerrilla activities. Another characteristic of guerrilla combat operations is the employment of multiple attacks over a wide area by small units tailored to the individual mission. This is not piecemeal commitment of units against single targets, but a number of attacks directed against several targets or portions of the targeted system. Such action tends to deceive the enemy as to the actual location of guerrilla bases, causes him to overestimate guerrilla strength, and forces him to disperse his rear area security and counter guerrilla efforts. A target is critical. This is talking about target selection. A target is critical when its destruction or damage will exercise a significant influence upon the enemy's ability to conduct or support operations. Such targets as bridges, tunnels, ravines, and mountain passes are critical to lines of communication. Engines, tires, and POL stores are critical to transportation. Each target is considered in relationship to other elements of the target system. Railroad systems. Railroads present one of the most profitable and easily accessible target systems for attack by guerrilla forces. In general, open stretches of track, switches, repair facilities, and coal and water supplies provide unlimited opportunities for attack. On electrified railroads, power substations, plants, lines offer critical targets. Types of railway targets vary with the geographical area. Railroad tracks are easily attacked by guerrilla units because it is almost impossible to guard long stretches of track effectively. Lightly armed mobile guerrilla units can inflict heavy damage on tracks. Guerrilla attacks against rails have far-reaching effects on an enemy who relies heavily upon railroad traffic for military movement. Power systems. Power lines are vulnerable to attack much in the same manner as wire communications. Large transmission towers often require demolitions for destruction. Critical points in any power system are the transformer stations. If these stations are not accessible but to attacks by guerrilla units, long-range fire from small or large caliber weapons may disrupt their operations. Power-producing plants and steam-generating plants may be too heavily guarded for raid operations. To disable them, UW forces should concentrate on cutting off the fuel supply. Water supply systems. The disruption of water lines supplying industries can often be profitably accomplished. Water supplies generally are conducted through underground pipelines and may be destroyed with explosive charges. Raids against reservoir facilities and purification plants are also feasible, but the possible effects upon the civilian population must be considered. Psychological operations in support of unconventional warfare. Unconventional warfare involves ideological, religious, political, and social factors which promote intense emotional partisanship. Resistance organizations tend to attract personnel who accept violent change as a means of social action. They are motivated by hope for change. But the fluid nature of resistance activity, the alternate periods of isolation and combat, the surreptitious life make resistance personnel particularly susceptible to propaganda effects. These are just a few excerpts from the U.S. Army Field Manual 31-21, Guerrilla Warfare and Special Forces Operations. And I would ask you, the things that you've seen going on, especially over the last 2 years now, all the factory fires, all the supply chain disruptions, all the cyber attacks, the train derailments, food disruption, power disruption, internet disruptions, air traffic disruptions, oil and gas facility fires, balloons, mass shootings, open borders. The media and fact checkers would have you believe that this stuff is all just normal. This happens every single year. But tell me when the last time was you saw this much of it being reported day after day. This stuff going on in our country is sabotage, whether that's by elements of our own government or some other country, I don't know. But there is too much of it, and it's too coincidental to say that it's accidental. You have a government administration that lies about everything. So, of course, they're not going to tell us if this is sabotage. They want us to believe that everything's just fine. We're in a proxy war with Russia, and I would argue with China. And I believe these attacks, and they are attacks in this country, it is sabotage. It is guerrilla in nature. From everything I just read from that manual, and you look at the things going on, all these events have the nature and characteristics of sabotage and guerrilla warfare actors. What can be done about it? Nothing. But you should be aware, and I think that these attacks will become more frequent and more serious in the near future. So this would be the time for you to prepare and be ready for the worst.
Thank you for listening to the Behind the Line podcast. If you like this broadcast, please like and share it. Please follow us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, Twitter, Truth Social, Telegram, Gab, Parler, and LinkedIn. You can find our podcast at BehindTheLinePodcast.com, NetNewsNetwork.net, and on Anchor, Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and anywhere podcasts can be found. Thank you for your support.